My name is Gloria White. I'm 72 years old, and at this point in my life, well, I thought I'd heard it all, but nothing prepared me for the day I heard my own daughter-in-law scream. Why is this old leech here? We don't have room. Have you ever felt expelled from a place you built with your own hands? Have you ever been treated as a nuisance within what should be your shelter? Because I went. And it wasn't by strangers. Why, a cow. No, it was for the family that I raised with so much love. Maybe you're here because this story sounds like yours. Or because that phrase also hurt inside, as it hurt me. Be that as it may, well, I understand. I know the bitter taste of being left aside, of hearing words that we never forget, spoken by those who should take care of us. But don't worry. I didn't come here to cry. I came to tell you how that phrase, which seemed like a final blow, ended up awakening in me something that even I didn't know still existed. Courage. Because when an old woman decides to stand up in silence, even the walls hear. But before we dive into the heart of this story, I need you to know one thing. Not every war starts with shouts. Sometimes it starts with silence. I was standing there, at the door of the house I had built with my own hands, when I heard my daughter-in-law scream. Why is this old leech here? We don't have room. She spoke loudly, angrily, as if I were a nuisance. And there, one sound, in front of everyone, I was pushed out of my own story. But what Megan didn't know is that this old woman she despised had a secret. Something kept for years, something that didn't make noise, but had enough strength to turn their world upside down. Not that day, but at the right time. If you've ever been pushed aside, if you've been looked at as if you're no longer worthwhile, then stay with me. From the heart, Nani. This story is painful to tell, but I need to share it, because maybe it's a little yours too. And if at any time you feel that this story spoke to you, leave a like, subscribe, not as an obligation, but like a hug from woman to woman, because today, more than telling what I experience, I need to feel heard. There are days when the memory comes like a light breeze, bringing smells and sounds that no one else feels. I remember the sound of the old radio in the kitchen, Ella Fitzgerald playing softly as I embroidered yet another wedding dress in my small sewing room. It was there that I spent the mornings, with thread in my hand and hope in my chest. Every point I gave had a reason. To put food on the table, to pay the bills, to raise my boy properly. Robert was my only son, and my only reason to continue after I was widowed. At the age of 44, grief has aged me quickly, but it has broken me. Unchained. I was saving money like someone who joins bricks of a future. $1 here, $5 there. It was more than 20 years of keeping, dreaming, and then I was able to buy that land in Cape May, away from the noise. Wow. Close to the sea, a little piece of land that for many people was just sand. But for me, it was freedom. Every wall of that house I raised with the help of a mason friend. I chose the paint for the balcony, the bathroom tile, the wood for the windows. That was more than a house. It was my temple, my pride, my effort becoming home. I always imagined that place full of laughter. I dreamed of Christmas with my family, children running across the porch, the smell of turkey coming out of the kitchen, and, for a while, how life even seemed like it was going to smile back. When Robert graduated, I was there, pendant, in the audience, applauding. When he got his first job as a sales manager, I made a candle dinner. Even if it was just the two of us, I never let there be a lack of support, nor presence, but over time, and obesities, my boy began to drift away. First, there were the cancelled dinners, then the compromised holidays, and then came Megan. Oh, Megan. I met her at a Sunday lunch. Polite, smile, patterns, sweet perfume, calculating eyes. I tried to like her. I swear I tried. Eine Meazania, Captain Actoadiopa, no sit oban. Set the table with my best set of dishes, and placed fresh flowers from the yard. She thanked her with a wave and spent most of her time on her cell phone. After that day, nothing was the same. When they got married, I gave up the Cape May house for a whole week as a honeymoon gift. I made a point of preparing the place. Leave affectionate notes in the rooms. On the way back, Robert, and out in us, thanked me. Megan didn't say a word. Even so, I kept trying. I invited them both to spend the holidays, prepared clean sheets, made apple pie the way Robert liked it. But visits were becoming rare and cold. Megan always in a hurry, always tired. He began to make guesses. This house needed a renovation. What? These pieces of furniture are so old. Right. I smiled and pretended it wasn't me, because I believed that time fixes everything. What love and patience win? What? Until one day, I got there and saw something that hurt me more than any words. The house was all changed. Now, the curtains changed. My paintings saved. The cabinets reorganized. As if I were just a guest. As if the place had another owner. Oh, Robert said. Now, Megan just wanted to give it a makeover. Mom, I swallowed hard, because those who love swallow a lot. Me down. But the feeling I had, it was as if they had erased my tracks, as if I was being removed little by little from my own history. And here I need to take a break, because this feeling, how to be erased slowly, not without fanfare, without screaming. It is a pain that many women feel, but few have the courage to say out loud. Have they ever looked at you as if you were getting in the way, when all you did was give your life? Have you ever had the feeling that your presence bothers you within what you have built with love? If you've ever felt that, comment below. Meow. It says I've lived it. Or, it's true. If it touched something inside. Meow. Oh, I just don't want to say about. Because, sometimes, just knowing that we are not alone, the weight is lighter. Wow. But going back, I made myself strong. I kept going. I continued to accept it. I didn't want to fight. I didn't want to lose my son. I thought that if I lowered my head one more time, maybe everything would go back to normal. But there are things that the more you accept, the more people advance. And in this advance, I started to disappear. First, they took my picture frames out of the room. Then, my balcony chair, my being, until the day came when they took my place for good. But before that day came, there was a moment that was engraved in my soul, a silent warning, a day that showed me that that house, it was no longer mine, and it was on that day that something inside me began to change. Do you know how to recognize when you are being taken from your own history? Because in the next chapter, that's what I realized. In the cruelest way. The first time I noticed something different was on a spring weekend. I had given advance notice that I was going to spend those days at the Cape May house, as I had done every year. The same time, since I bought that land with the sweat of my body, I prepared my suitcase with care, took my dried herbs, my linen robe, and even a lemon cake to leave on the table, as I did in the old days. But when I arrived, I found the gate ajar and voices that I didn't recognize right away. When I walked in, there they were. Megan, her mother, Ayn, and her sister, Mayin, all sitting on the porch as if they owned the place. Megan looked at me surprised, or perhaps annoyed, and said with that cold smile, "Oh, we didn't know you were coming this weekend." I, with a heavy heart, could only say, "This is my home, dear. No, and I always come at this time." She pretended to laugh, as if it was all a misunderstanding. Of course, it must have been a communication error, but deep down, I felt, no, it was not a mistake at all. After that came the comments, nothing direct, but poisonous. "These pieces of furniture are, well, rustic, right? Or this house has such a old." I smiled, as if I didn't understand, but I understood. And every time she moved an ornament or put on new pillows without asking me, I felt like they tore a little piece of me away. One day, I went to open the living room cabinet, and my blue glass glasses were gone. They were chipped. We threw them away. Play. Thus, in the plural, as if I had no voice. Mon, cut. As if my house were a warehouse of outdated junk. Oh, Robert. Robert. My son was always silent. But after he got married, he was almost mute. I tried to talk, but he dodged. When I asked about the glasses, he just said, "Leave it alone." "Mom, they were old." "Nay, Atkamai." I was silent, but what hurt wasn't the glass. It was the ease with which he accepted being made disappear. The dates also began to change. A holiday that has always been mine. Suddenly, Moya, I've no such here. It was already agreed for them to go with friends. When I complained, oh, Megan replied with poisonous sweetness. Oh, but it's just that our friends' kids love that beach, and already enjoyed it so much, right? As if I had an expiration date, as if after a certain age, all I had left was to give up space. There was a day when I went with a friend to visit the house, and we came across a barbecue happening in the backyard. Strange guests, loud music, soda cans strewn across the grass. And there was Megan, oh, wearing my red apron, laughing as if nothing was wrong. Just a quick meeting. I thought I wouldn't come today. I smiled and said that I only stopped by to leave a candy. I returned home, feeling that I had left more than one dessert there. I left a part of me. With each visit, something was different. A vase out of place, a new curtain without my permission, personal objects stored that never appeared again. Oh, there was a day when I even found my old Bible inside a box in the basement. When I asked, Megan said, "Why, I didn't think I was wearing it." And it was in this sentence that I understood. Whoa, she wanted to erase me. Slowly, with fake affection, with gestures disguised as care. But deep down, that was it. To get me out of the house I built. And the worst, with the complicity of my own son, I started to feel like a guest. Each trip there was an emotional preparation. I had to try hard not to cry in the bathroom when I saw the change of paintings, towels, handal, iron towel. Small things, because that's how it starts. First, the details change. Then they change you completely. And I was still trying to convince myself that everything was fine, that it was just a phase, that maybe it was me exaggerating. But our bodies feel it. Our soul warns. And I felt it. I felt that they were pushing me out of my own story, like someone who closes a door slowly so as not to make noise. It was on one of these visits, looking at the remodeled room, the smell of my house replaced by cheap, aromatic candles, that I found myself thinking, are they preparing me to never come back? And the answer came faster than I imagined. The day they shamelessly kicked me out in front of everyone. How? But do you know what was the phrase that knocked down the walls inside me? In the next part, I'll tell you. Because, after she said that, I was no longer the same. That morning was beautiful. Clear skies, fresh air, and limpio mountains. The kind of day that always made me grateful for having fought so hard to build my house in Cape May. I took the bus very early, with my linen bag, a corn cake still warm, and the key hanging around my neck, as I had always done. When I turned the corner of the quiet street where my house was, I noticed something strange. 3 cars parked in my driveway. 3, thou. None of them I recognized. My chest tightened. I quickened my pace. When I opened the gate, I heard children's screams, loud sound coming from the living room, the noise of the barbecue lit in the backyard. I entered carefully, and I was shocked. My house was unrecognizable. Inflatable mattresses scattered on the floor, wet towels hanging from the kitchen chairs, toys thrown in the corridors. The smell was of burnt hamburgers and disrespect, and there she was. Megan told me, and it said John and was helmet. In my kitchen, alone, wearing the white apron with blue embroidery that I sewed by hand. Even when I dreamed of family Sundays, she looked at me without surprise, as if I was the visitor. Oh, Gloria. Robert said you weren't coming today. We decided to take advantage of the space. It's so hot. I swallowed. I felt my face heat up, but I didn't let it show. This is my home, was all I could say. Megan smiled. That rehearsed little smile, and replied, Ningena. Sure, we're only here for today. Everything is under control. I walked to the fridge. My pots were all pushed to the bottom, some open. My fruits were gone. I went to my room, and there was the final blow. My clothes had disappeared from the closet. In its place, bags and pieces from Megan's sister. When I questioned, she replied as if she were doing a favor. We thought it was better to free up space. I didn't know if you would come anymore. As if my existence were a noise in their comfort. As if my closet, my sheets, my food were expendable. I stood there for a few seconds, not knowing whether to cry or scream. But I chose silence. I always did. They spoke with that politeness that hurts more than a slap. They said, thank you. But they stole my peace. They smiled. No. But they erased me little by little. No. And me? I pretended I couldn't see. That he didn't feel. Because a mother, no, a woman like me, learns to swallow her own disappearance so as not to bother anyone. I spent the rest of the day sitting on the porch, looking out to sea, trying to remember the first time I walked into that house with Robert by the hand. He was 7 years old. Said, why won't you talk, my friend? Oh, Mom, no. One day this place is going to be our paradise. And now it was the hell of my dignity. When night fell, they made a fire in the backyard, laughed loudly, told stories as if I wasn't there. No child came to talk to me. Not a word of respect. Megan's mother looked me up and down as if I were the housekeeper. Does she always come like this by surprise? He whispered, and the muffled laughter ran through me. No. I slept badly that night, on a sofa that was once mine, and now smelled of people who never wanted me there. The next day, no, I left early, without saying goodbye, but inside me, a question echoed, no town. How long would I accept being pushed out of my own house with velvet gloves? What did I still need to hear to understand that they were taking me out, with a smile on my face, but a knife in my hands? And, as you will see, this answer came on the following holiday, in the form of a scream. I didn't tell them I was going. I made a point. I waited for the Memorial Day holiday, the same one where I always received my son with the table set, white linen tablecloth, and blueberry pie made with my calloused hands. That morning, I woke up early, now, took a shower calmly, put on perfume, folded my clothes inside the blue bag that I have been carrying since I became a widow, and I went. No, went to Sarah. I took the bus line 419, sat at the window as always, looking at the road with that presentiment that only experienced women understand. The sky was too beautiful to hide what was ahead. When I got off in Cape May, the sun was already shining high. I walked slowly to my house, feeling the sea wind on my face. But as I turned the corner, I saw the same cars, the same, no, one, and one more. I heard city county. How no I consider. The garage was full, the gate unlocked. The sound of laughter and running footsteps echoed from the balcony. My heart tightened, but I kept walking, with the key in my hand. I climbed the 2 steps of the entrance and, wow, before turning the handle, I heard it as if I were at my own wake. Why's this old Leech here? We don't have room. It was Megan's voice, discharge, white, and it wasn't a whisper. No, it was an outburst, a scream from someone who didn't even bother to check if I was around. My body froze. I stood there, with my hand fixed on the lock, listening to everything. She always shows up unannounced. Nanos, he doesn't know how to respect the space of others. Her sister laughed. The mother-in-law said, "There's a house in Cherry Hill, isn't there? So why don't you stay there?" I could have left. I could have let it go. But at that moment, something inside me snapped. It wasn't anger that I felt. It was worse. It was the end of a hope. The end of the illusion that I still had a place in what was mine. Entered. I pushed the door slowly. No. As if entering a place that no longer belonged to me. They froze for a second when they saw me. Megan turned white. Why? The sister pretended not to hear. Her mother-in-law looked away. No one apologized. No one tried to fix it. Megan just said, in that dry, polite voice, "The house is full. Can you come back another day?" I took a deep breath. I squeezed the strap of the bag in my hand, and he said, "Ah, all right. Dear, is that it?" I sat on the bench, on the porch. The children kept running. One of them almost knocked over my lavender vase. Her mother-in-law laughed, as if laughing. No one offered me a glass of water, not a place to sit inside. It was as if I were any lady coming from the street. There, on that bench. Whoa, I died a little. I was looking at the sea and thinking, how many times do we swallow our own name just so we don't lose the connection with the one we love? How many times do we accept being invisible just to stay close? But on that day, something changed. I didn't cry. I didn't ask for anything. I was just silent. But inside, why don't you now? I felt it. It was unlike anything I had ever felt. It was a cold, clean, organized anger. Wow. as if my dignity had risen and said to me, "Rise together. Nostrum ondiatarthar, arnistelmar." And look, I'm here opening my heart, telling my story. If you're listening, leave a like on this video and subscribe to the channel because I still have a lot of things saved to tell you. Stories that live deep in the soul. And sometimes all we need is one ear on the other side to keep going. That night, I returned home to Cherry Hill without looking back. I lay in bed without sleeping, and in the dark, I felt something that I hadn't felt in a long time. The urge to fight, not with shouting, not with scandal, but with the silence that teaches, with justice that comes slowly. But when it comes, it does not forgive. And it is now that you will understand what I did later, because I also had a secret, and when it came to light, nothing, absolutely nothing, continued as before. After I left my own home with a shattered soul, I drove to a simple hotel by the sea. It was a modest place, one of those with worn carpet and the smell of old sea air. I paid $110 for the night with the credit card that I only use in emergencies. And on that day, it was an emergency of the heart. The receptionist was kind, called me my man, gave me the key to room 204. I climbed slowly, nearly sky, my shoulders heavy as a stone. When I closed the door behind me, the silence embraced me as if to say, "Now, it's just you." I sat on the edge of the bed, put the bag on my lap, and stood there, still, alone. The sun beat down the plastic curtain and danced on the white walls. I wasn't hungry, nor thirst, just tiredness. And inside that hotel room, my head traveled to another time. I remembered when Robert was little, 5 or 6 years old, and he helped hold the brush while I painted the fence of the house. He wore a blue cap, and he said, "Wow, Mom, ni se anestio, or that are kaiser dione, or bersobok stella. This is going to be our summer house forever, right?" And I said, "Wow, hi, and you forever, my love." I remembered the first trip together to Home Depot, choosing the kitchen floor. He wanted the gray. I preferred the caramel. We ended up taking the white one because it was the cheapest. I smiled alone at this memory, but soon the smile turned to tears, a tear that flowed slowly, warm, as if making its way inside. I cried there, but it wasn't aloud. Desperate cry. It was a small cry, silent on our tongue, one of those that we cry with our whole body. And do you know what hurt the most? It wasn't Megan's scream. It wasn't her sister's contempt. It was my son's silence. I picked up the cell phone with shaky hands and called. He called 5 times. It fell into the mailbox. I texted, "Robert, in a hotel. Ma, I need to talk to you." He visualized. He did not answer. The erased canvas looked like a tomb. I put the phone away, got up, opened the suitcase as if digging up memories. I took my old pajamas, the lilac flannel with white buttons, and changed slowly. The mirror showed me a woman I almost didn't recognize. Her hair was unkempt. Her look was deepened. Her shoulders shrugged. I ran my hand over my own face, as if I wanted to remind myself of who I was before all this, before being treated as a nuisance. Before being called a leech. I tried to sleep, but the pillow felt too hard, and my head, too crowded. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard the phrase, that sentence, as if it had become an echo. Lundewile. So now, why is this old leech here? I lay there. Why listening to the sound of the sea in the distance. Mixed with the hubbub of some couple in the next room. I remembered all the times I gave up myself so as not to bother. I remembered all the no's I swallowed, all the donations, all the favors, all the silences, and in time. And there, on that thin hotel mattress, I understood something that hurt more than any rejection. I had forgotten myself, forgotten of my worth, of my voice, of the space that I fought so hard to conquer. And maybe it was time to remember. But how to do this when even your own child turns his face? How do you rebuild a dignity that has been stripped away little by little, with false kindnesses and poisonous smiles? The answer did not come that night, but the next day, when he woke up, something inside me was no longer the same, and that's where a part of the story begins that they never imagined I would have the courage to write, because the old one they tried to erase was about to reappear, and it would not be in silence. Network connection lost. New idea. Attempting to reconnect. The next morning, I woke up with heavy eyes, but my heart, the heart was strange. There was a different silence in there, a silence that was not sadness. It was lucidity. I got up unhurriedly, put on a simple outfit, tied my hair, and went to have my coffee alone in the hotel's living room. The coffee was weak, the bread stale, but the taste of injustice that lingered in my mouth was more bitter than anything. While I was stirring the spoon in the cup, an idea came to me. Back there, to return to my house, but not to beg for space this time. I would go back to get something that belonged to me, and also to confirm a suspicion that had been haunting me for a while, because deep down, we feel when evil is being sown on the sly. I took a cab and drove to Cape May. When Megan answered the gate, I made the calmest voice I could. I forgot some medicine in the bathroom, in the guest room. I just came to get it, and am leaving. She hesitated, looked to the side, then smiled. Of course, just a minute. He opened the gate, as if doing a favor. Her mother-in-law was in the kitchen, her sister watching television. Robert, of course, wasn't, entered. I slowly climbed the stairs. He knew exactly where he needed to go. Behind the closet of the master bedroom, the one that was once mine, there was a small hidden compartment, a false bottom that I had made when we renovated the house for the second time. There, I kept important documents, things that no one else needed to see, or at least, that's what I believed. When I opened the compartment, the fright took my breath away. Everything was stirred. Open folders, crumpled papers, my title deed, now torn in half. The original deed to the house, with my married name, folded as if it were garbage. And there, in the middle of the paperwork, I found what froze my spine. A draft lawsuit. The title was clear as day. Request for judicial interdiction, mental incapacity for administration of assets. My name, in capital letters, and as applicants, Robert and Megan. Yes, my son, the one I generated with pain, who I created with sacrifice, was planning to take me completely out of my own history. There were annexes, a psychiatric report with a shaky signature, false, clearly forged. No. They said that I had signs of recurrent mental confusion, memory lapses, disorganized behavior. All lies. A narrative built to take away my right to own what was mine. And, in the end, a valuation of the house. Why? $310,000. A handwritten note in the corner of the sheet read, "Why? With this amount, we paid off the financing of the new apartment." I took a deep breath. I felt my heart pounding, but I didn't cry. Not there. I closed my eyes for a few seconds and heard the sound of children playing downstairs, as if nothing was happening. As if I had already been excluded for good. But inside me, it wasn't sadness. It was absurd clarity. I wasn't just being rejected. I was being robbed. Coldly, now, with paper, no stamp and false witnesses. And I say to you, with all the weight of my soul, nothing, absolutely nothing, hurts more than realizing that someone you've loved your whole life chose to hurt you of their own free will. It is not an impulse. It was flat, with signature and date, long. And look, if you've made it this far, stay with me, because I promise you, the strongest part of this story is yet to happen. I'm just starting to tell. There is still something that to this day gives me a chill when I remember. I closed the folder slowly, and I went back to my place. I kept everything in my bag, as if picking up the pieces of his own name. I left the room in silence, went downstairs. Megan looked at me from the hallway and said, "Did you find the medicine?" I replied, "I found what I needed, no." And I walked out the front door without looking back. That night, I didn't go back to the hotel. I drove to Cherry Hill in silence. And all the way, I only thought about one thing. If they were willing to take me out with paper and lies, maybe it was time for me to use paper too, but in the right way, in a way they didn't expect. And that's where a name comes into this story that would change everything. A name they didn't know, but that had been kept with me for years. Do you have any idea who it was? So wait and see. Wow. No. Because when he came on the scene, nothing was the same again. I went back to the hotel and closed the curtain as soon as I entered the room. I wanted to stay in the dark, not out of fear, but because the light at Laumint was too harsh. I sat on the edge of the bed, took off my shoes slowly, and leaned my back against the wall. My body still carried the dust from the house where I was born. My blood smells like the earth I planted, the needle I sewed, the tears I hid for years. And there, alone in that yellow-walled hotel room, I began to remember everything that brought me there. Winters were harsh in Cherry Hill, and always what well. I worked in the basement of my house with a borrowed portable heater, hands shaky from the cold, and needles that hurt my fingers until they bled. One essence was so godly. I sewed wedding dresses for women who would never know my name. She embroidered with gold thread, while Robert slept on the sofa wrapped in an old blanket. There were days when my dinner was the bread from the day before with apple peel tea, but I never complained because every stitch, every cut on his finger, volume, was for him, for us, and for that dream, to have a house near the sea where he could grow free, where I could grow old in peace. I remember as if it were now the day I bought the land in Cape May. I held the check so tightly that my hands trembled. It was the first time I saw my name on something big. The woman at the registry office asked me if I was sure. I just nodded, my eyes watering, because, yes, I was sure. That was all I had, and everything I wanted. I bought every single thing in the house with a mother's care. Every pot, every cushion, every tile in the kitchen. Wow, everything was chosen with love. Robert and I painted the balcony together. He was still a teenager, complained about the heat. But at the end of the day, he said, Mom, one day this house will be the happiest place in our family. And at that moment, I believed. I believed it until I met Megan. I remember exactly the day. She arrived with a bouquet of cheap flowers and a calculated smile. She was polite, too sweet, but her eyes didn't smile, no. And I felt it. Something inside me wanted to retreat, but my mother's heart wanted to see her son happy. Then I swallowed my intuition. I swallowed and poured coffee, making room. Making dessert, smiling. What city storm? Or the national alcohol go cutting? And now, now, I was there, sitting in the dark, when I found out, with a pile of documents proving that it all turned into an early estate plan, a house of $300,000, a false report, a betrayed signature, now, and a mute son, who preferred to remain silent in the face of the theft of his own mother's life. Do you want to know what? There are pains that are not made to be screamed. They are made to be understood in silence. And if you've ever felt that pain of having given everything for someone and then being discarded as if you never did anything, then comment below. He says to me, you watched the kinds. I understand you, or I know how it is, because only those who live it know what they carry. But that night, something has changed. As I remembered everything, I realized that I wasn't weak. I was sober. New. For the first time, I saw everything clearly. And what was my greatest pain began to turn into strength. Megan thought I was going to disappear quietly, that I would accept being pushed into oblivion with a smile on my face. But she forgot one thing. It was with silence that I built my life, and it will be with him that I will rebuild my justice. The next morning, I wrote 3 names on a piece of paper. One of them, it was that of a man I hadn't seen in 20 years. A name that had been kept like a letter, turned on the table of life. But now, now, it was time to turn that card over. Do you have any idea who it was? And what did he know about me that no one else knew? Because when he got into this story, the house turned. Why? Literally, on the morning of the 3rd day. Yes, I opened my eyes before sunrise. There was no more chest pain. What remained was focus. I got out of bed with a kind of firmness I hadn't felt in years. I put on my most neutral outfit, tied my hair in a bun, and went to the mirror. I looked myself in the eyes, those eyes that have seen so much. Burial? No. Childbirth? Rejection? No. Miracle? Miracle. And I whispered to myself, now it's you for you. I grabbed my purse and went to the bank, the same as always, where I opened my account in 1979 with $50 and a squeeze of hope in my chest. The manager, Mr. Dawson, still knew me by name. He received me with a cordial smile, one of those we don't see around anymore. I asked to see my statement of long-term investments. He pulled out the papers, offered me a coffee, and said, "Hey, you have a good mattress here. Mrs. White, $90,000 that I saved penny by penny while I mended dresses, sold crochet, und how what I touched at walk, say what could check stopped buying new shoes and said to myself, what? It's going to be worth it. And it was worth it, but not for them. That was my blood that became a number, and my silence that turned into balance, and it wasn't going to be used to finance an ungrateful daughter-in-law's apartment. I took a deep breath and asked, with all the calmness in the world, where I want a total blockade of movement by third parties, without exception. And I also want a document from the bank stating my full legal and mental capacity. Mr. Dawson was surprised, but no questions. Maybe he saw something in my eyes. Maybe I felt the force of my limit. He said, in order this count to sort this out, you will have what you need by the end of the day. I left the bench and sat in a cafe on the corner. Well, I ordered some tea. Now, Silverchair. I pulled out my cell phone and typed with steady hands. Attorney specializing in family and probate law in New Jersey. I found 3 names. I called the first one. Lee. The tone was dry. For the second, Lisa. The voice treated me as if I had called by mistake. The third, he answered with kindness. He listened to my report in silence and said, "Radio Bastardly Comos de Cow. We have time tomorrow at 10 a.m. Come and bring the documents you find." I closed my eyes for a moment and felt a tear flow. But this time, it wasn't sadness. It was of strength, of silent victory. Meow. As if the old Gloria, the one they tried to erase, was rising from within the shadow, one step at a time. That afternoon, I returned to Cape May. I entered my house as one enters a warfield, with one's head held high. Megan opened the door in surprise. "Ah, are you back?" I smiled and replied, "I just came to talk." She hesitated. No, but made room. Nah. Her mother-in-law, and they, sitting on the porch, didn't even look at me. The sister pretended to be on her cell phone. The children were in the pool. Entered. I walked around the room calmly. I looked at every corner as if studying a map. Every detail, every object out of place. It was a wound, but now, new. I didn't bleed anymore. I watched, because the woman who enters quietly, it is the same one that can go all out. Megan tried to strike up a conversation about the weather, about the beach. I feigned interest. I sat in the armchair in the living room, which was no longer mine, but that day it looked like a throne. I spoke quietly, noun, firmly. "Do you know what silent justice means, Megan?" She laughed. "Sorry, I don't understand." Go figure. Because now, countdown. Each step was already part of the plan. And what would come next? What would come next? She never imagined. What about you? Do you know what happens when an injured woman decides to stop keeping quiet? Wait and see, because tomorrow at 10 a.m., I was going to find someone who would change everything. And when that happened, I breathed again, like someone who returns home. 3 o'clock and 9 on the new cow, sitting or cheered, your kind. 47 a.m. And when I arrived on Main Street, the sun had barely risen properly. But the heat in my chest was different. I walked into the old red brick building with a firm briefcase under my arm. My footsteps echoed in the hallways as if to warn. "She is here?" Thomas Gallagher's office was on the 2nd floor. The carpet smelled of old dust, but the chairs were made of genuine leather. There was a bookshelf full of books with names I couldn't pronounce. Behind the desk, a man with gray hair, thin-rimmed glasses, and an expression of someone who had seen a lot. He stood up slowly, greeted me with a firm handshake, and said, Mrs. White, you can sit down. I'm available. When she does you out, I turn to Pato. I opened the folder with my hands a little shaky, but with a steady gaze. I took paper by paper, each one with a piece of the story that I never wanted to tell. The deed to the house, the bank records, the screenshots of the messages where Robert said it's just a matter of time, the draft of the interdiction process, the forged report, the note on the value of the house. On what Thomas said, nothing. I just listened, and he wrote it down. His silence reminded me of mine, but with another weight, his weighed justice. After a few minutes, he leaned forward. He took the paper with the false signature, ran his eyes over it, nodded, and said, "Lord, how did you sorry cantata? Wanting to do that so called to equal sound?" Without raising his voice, Mrs. White, this is a crime. It is a serious crime. We have here an attempt to falsify a medical document. Patrimonial fraud. Misuse of private property and home invasion. Everything documented. I remained silent. I just handed over the photos of the messy house, the mattresses on the floor, the apron worn without permission, the food jars piled up outside the refrigerator, the blatant lack of respect. He took everything calmly and began to put together a dossier. With surgical precision, he put together a plan. Let's do it like this. First, we filed an immediate eviction action for misuse of the property. Second, we will file a complaint for attempted falsification of interdiction. And finally, a request for a restraining measure to protect his assets and his legal integrity. He took a sheet, typed the first terms, turned to me, and said, "You are about to open a silent war. Are you ready?" And there was here. In that second, wow, I realized I was no longer trying to protect the house. I was protecting who I was, who I am, and who I still have the right to be. Ends already destroyed everything. Mr. Whitefall, Gallagher, Lee, I replied, out when she called me a useless old woman behind my back, when he handed me to his wife as if passing on a burden. I'm just giving back what's left. No, I don't talk to you out. I signed each sheet in firm handwriting. Not a single tear fell. No voice trembled. No tone. Because at that moment there was no more room for doubt. And look, if this piece of my life can become a mirror or a hug for someone, help me carry it forward. Like and subscribe here to the channel. Shine. It makes more difference than you think. Sometimes we think we're alone, but there are a lot of women out there going through the same pain, the same way. Now, quiet, still, hidden, awareness, thinking that she cannot react. On the way out of the office, Gallagher looked me in the eye and said, "You have more strength than you realize, but get ready. They're going to try to turn the tide." I just smiled. Because the game, it was already turned. Now There was only one thing missing. Back there. Not angry, but with documents. And this time, it wouldn't be to ask for space. It would be to say, the owner is back. But what happened the day I stepped into that house? Not even the lawyer foresaw it. Do you have any idea what it was? Because what awaited me there, it would show that the end was still far away. Too far away. On Friday, at 9 o'clock sharp, the Thomas Black car pulled up outside my hotel. He came down with a leather briefcase in his hands, his countenance firm. Along with him came a tall, thin bailiff, with those glasses that barely hide the fatigue of the routine, and a white-haired lady who greeted me with a restrained smile. She was the notary, who had come especially to witness everything. I wore my gray suit, the one he only wore at funerals or hearings, because that day it was almost both. The trip to Cape May was in silence. Thomas reviewed the papers. The officer adjusted the discreet holster around his waist. I looked out the window. The road seemed shorter than before, or maybe it was just the certainty that made everything more direct. When we arrived, the sun was strong, but the sea wind made everything look like a movie scene. And it was a film they never imagined I would write. We got out of the car without haste. The gate was open. I saw the porch of the house. My house was full of voices. Megan, sitting in the wicker chair, was having coffee with her sister. Now, the children ran along the side with water pistols. Her mother-in-law was inside. Probably messing with what she shouldn't. When Megan saw the three of them arriving together, the lawyer, the officer, and the notary, she dropped the cup on the wooden floor. "What is this? What is this nonsense?" he asked, already standing up with a nervous look. Thomas was blunt. "Mrs. Megan White, we are here with an eviction order issued by the New Jersey court for trespassing and attempted document fraud. This lady next to me is a notary. This is the bailiff responsible for the legal notification and execution of the decision. And this house belongs in record use and possession exclusively to Mrs. Gloria White. Weiss. The silence that fell was so loud that I could hear the wind stirring the back fence. Megan laughed nervously. You can't be serious. Robert is her son." The officer crossed his arms and replied without raising his voice. "Son is not an owner, and there is no registered power of attorney that allows continuous use of this property. You will have 30 minutes to collect your personal belongings. The rest will be inventoried under judicial supervision." "How?" The sister stood up in shock. The mother-in-law appeared at the door and began to cry, screaming that it was injustice. Veronica, with her cell phone in hand, began to film everything, saying, "We're going to sue you. You crazy old woman." And I am the town. I don't know. I didn't say a word. I just stayed there, standing, with his hands clasped in front of his body, observing everything, standing in my house, back to my floor, letting down silk house. Do you know what that is? To see justice do what blood did not have the courage to do. It is like watching one's dignity being returned, inch by inch, not with shouting, but with papers, stamps, and the strength of someone who is tired of asking for permission. The children were quiet, not understanding. One of them, the smallest one, my smallest one, looked at me from afar and asked Megan, "Mom, wasn't this Grandma's house?" Megan, not knowing what to answer, threw a suitcase on the floor and said, "Let's go. This is not going to stay like this." But he had already stayed. And if you're feeling in your chest a weird thing of goosebumps, of emotion, well, stay here with me. Because if you think that was strong, just wait for what comes next. Because justice on paper is one thing, but when the truth starts to hurt inside, then, yes, the fall is real. That day, I went to sleep peacefully for the first time in months. But not everything was resolved, because the worst was yet to come. Robert didn't know, but when he came home that night to find his wife's bags on the sidewalk, that's when he finally came to me. Oh, and what he said, to this day, it echoes in my soul. You know what? So hold on tight, because it hurt, but it hurt him too. The sky was turning orange when I heard the sound of the car speeding in the driveway. Robert knew. I knew that sooner or later he would appear. He got out of the car with a sweaty face, rumpled shirt, messy hair. He looked like a child who arrived late for an important test. When he saw the bailiff and Thomas still on the sidewalk, he turned pale. Hounds. He hurriedly walked up to me. Mao was down, his eyes wide, once, his hands gesticulating. Mom, what is it? What are you doing? There are police here. Why? I turned around slowly. I looked into his eyes as if looking at a stranger. For the first time in my life, my gaze did not carry love. He carried truth. I took out of my bag the copy of the document, the draft of the interdiction request, the forged psychiatric report, his signature, my own. Down. The calculations of the value of the house. I handed it in slowly, without saying anything. He took the papers, read them one by one, and, with each line, his face lost color. Did you sign that? I asked. My voice was low but firm. He tried to answer, but his mouth didn't follow his brain. Megan came up behind him, trying to push the situation forward. It was all a misunderstanding. Robert never wanted any of that. He just wanted to protect you. We thought it was the best. Thomas placed himself between her and the officers. You are not authorized to interfere at this time. Robert, still, with the papers in his hand, shook his head and muttered, "No." She was the one who insisted, "No, Mom, Megan, what?" She said it was the only way. I just wanted to help. Help who? I cut in. Your wife or your conscience? He lowered his eyes. Megan, annoyed, Anne, shouted. She's old. He doesn't know how to take care of anything anymore. He keeps forgetting where he leaves things. Has difficulty with technology. And this house is stuck in time. The bailiff immediately turned around. Be careful with the tone. Now, Ma'am, respect is mandatory. When did he was silent? Robert was silent. The papers were still in his hand. Ah, the weight of those leaves seemed greater than anything else he had ever carried. Thomas crossed his arms and waited. Megan snorted. Nervously. Oh, pacing back and forth. It was then that Robert murmured, almost in a whisper. I knew it, but I didn't think it would get to that point. I stared at him for a few seconds, and then I just said, You stole from me the only thing I built with love, the only thing that was made for you. And now, you're going to learn the price of that. The silence that followed was so dense that we could hear the crackling of the wood under our feet. No one moved. Not even the birds sang anymore. Why, funny how some memories have the power to cut us inside like a sharp knife. They come back in one piece, with sound and yard. Now, smell, taste, and intuition. And as much as we want to forget, it can't. What about you? Do you have any memory like that? One that comes back without asking permission? Right there in the comments. Share with me. Maybe in your trunk. There is a pain similar to mine. But going back, at that moment, I understood that my son was no longer mine. It was out of this world, a world that I no longer recognized. But unlike before, this time I didn't cry, because my heart had already risen before me. And do you want to know the most curious? Robert didn't leave that night. He stayed. Why? He asked to talk, and what he told me? Inside the house, in the corner of the living room, made me realize that the betrayal, it was just the tip of the iceberg. Do you have any idea what he revealed? Because after that, I understood that the justice I was seeking was even greater than I imagined. At 10 o'clock in the morning, the bailiff looked at his wristwatch, took a deep breath, and announced in a firm voice, all occupants have 2 hours to vacate the property. Failure to comply will result in forced driving and legal liability. It fell like thunder. Megan widened her eyes. Her mother-in-law got up breathless from her kitchen chair and started screaming, This is a humiliation. A woman her age doesn't know what she's doing. Robert stood still, as if he was still trying to understand that all this was really happening. The rush began. Within minutes, bags of laundry were flying, boxes being shoved with their feet, voices mingled in despair. Megan was yelling at her sister. Her sister. Veronica, of course, took out her cell phone to film everything. But the notary went to her and said with authority, Unauthorized recording. You are in a judicial process. Veronica tried to argue, but soon lowered her arm. The children began to cry, not understanding the reason for the haste and tension. The mother-in-law grumbled in the corners. saying that it was persecution. Megan grumbled that she was going to appeal, that she still had the right, that this was not going to stay like this. But nothing helped. Every corner of the house was now a battlefield, and none of them had a secure trench. And me? I was sitting on the porch, in that rocking chair that my late husband set up in 1982, looking out to sea. Without a word, without a tear, without a muscle of the face moved by anger. The ocean wind hit my face like a caress. Every scream inside the house seemed to echo farther, because inside, I was already whole again. There was no more room for guilt. Megan came up to me, crying, "Gloria, not in town. Dies. Please, we can talk. You don't have to do that. It's just a house. Robert loves you. He was just trying to protect our future. You have no idea how difficult life is." I looked at her like someone looking at a tantrum child. He said nothing. She insisted, with her makeup already smudged. "Please, Gloria, please. Just a few more days." Robert appeared next. "Oh no, I'm tired. I cured Dr. Mom, forgive me. No, we can find a middle ground. I got lost. But on that day, I was no longer the woman who apologized for existing. I was the woman who existed with strength. I remained motionless. They knew that their words were overdue. They arrived after the destruction. Time passed slowly, but steadily. How justice should be. At 12:03 p.m. Now, the officer returned, tapped lightly on the doorframe. What do you call?" And said, "Well, all unoccupied." We checked each room. Nothing of the lady's value was removed or damaged. The garage is clean. The house is in your possession, legally and physically. Do you want to sign the refund now, or do you prefer to wait a little longer?" I got up from my chair. I walked up to him. He reached out with the keys, and when they touched my palms, it was like taking back my own heart. These keys, my God, they weren't just metal. They were my sweat, my memory, my youth, my struggle. The sound they made as they met at my keychain was like a liberation bell. No, there are things that time does not erase, and there are fights that we only win in silence. But it wins. I entered the house. It was empty, a silence so deep that it seemed like a prayer to me. The sunlight came in through the windows and touched the wooden floor, as if cleaning the traces of everything that was dirty inside. My footsteps echoed, slow but steady. I went to the kitchen. I opened the closet. There were my old dishes, the blue porcelain teapot, the dish towel embroidered with my name. In the living room, there was still the old rug that I bought with discount coupons. I sat on the couch, closed my eyes, and for a moment, I heard my boy's voice running around barefoot. shouting that he was going to build a sandcastle with me. Uh, Life has these ironies, Ma. Sometimes those we raise to be king become castle thieves. But the queen here, Anne, he never left the throne. And if you think the story ends here, you're wrong. Because even with the house back, even with justice done, there was still something I needed to do. Something that would move all of them. Because they gave me back my key. What was I going to take from them now? It was much more valuable. Can you guess what it was? Because the final blow, beyond, I wounded it sensoret, it was yet to come. That night, as the moon rose round over the sea of Cape May, I closed the front door calmly, as if sealing a story. Now, the house was in absolute silence, except for the constant sound of the waves crashing against the rocks in the distance. Everything smelled of disinfectant, of change, of emptiness. I walked slowly to my room. It was clean, tidy, as if it had never been invaded. Wow. But I knew. He knew where everything had been moved. I knew that someone was there wanting to erase my tracks. And yet, there I was back. I lay on the bed. The same one where I slept for so many summers, where I dreamed, where I cried the death of my husband, where I waited for Robert to come home from college to tell me that he had passed engineering, the same bed where I sewed the hem of Megan's wedding dress, believing that this wedding would bring peace. But that night, it didn't bring relief. The victory was done. Justice, sealed, nailed, unsealed, and even then, my chest ached as if I had lost everything. It was no longer anger. It was mourning, because in that house he was missing. How? The boy in short pants who made castles with me on the sand. The teenager who cried in shame when he fell off his bike. Oh, but ran to hug me. The son who called me my queen, even when he only had a simple sandwich on the table. Where did this boy go? I closed my eyes and saw all the fevers I took care of. The nights I slept, sitting with him on my lap. The savings counted to buy the new shoe at the beginning of classes. I remembered the smell of leather, watching his joy when opening the box. The thank you Mom said in that fine childlike voice that we never forget. And then I felt it. Loneliness, not that of being alone in a house, but that of having lost what was most mine, even without having been taken away by death. I lost a living son, a son who chose to lie, to be silent, no, to betray, no. Oh, nobody prepares us for this pain, because when a child dies, everyone understands their grief. But when he moves away out of selfishness, out of greed, the mourning is yours. Silent, misunderstood. That night, I cried as I had not cried for a long time. In silence, no hiccup, only water coming out of the eyes, washing a tired soul. And it was there, between tears and memories, that I understood. Sometimes justice costs the same price as loneliness, and even when we recover the house, the documents, the honor, down, showstone taverners. He still needs to learn to live with the absence of what he loved. But let me tell you something. Not everything that dies is buried. Sometimes something new springs from what seemed lost, and what bloomed days later I could never have imagined. Have you ever heard of a card capable of changing everything? Because she arrived, and when I read it, my hands trembled. You will understand. Ah, hold on. On Tuesday morning, no doubt, outside, as I sipped my black coffee on the porch, looking at the flowers that were beginning to be reborn in my small garden, the phone rang. It was Thomas. His voice came calmly, but with a firmness that I already recognized. Mrs. White, Linen, we have moves. Well, I disturbed. The prosecution accepted the complaint, and there's more. And the doctor who signed the false report is being investigated. And it seems that it was not the first time he did this. I was silent for a few seconds. The news did not cause me relief or euphoria, just a confirmation of what I already knew. Lies have short legs, and justice, even slow, walks. In the days that followed, now Westerton, all the sound tropieux, formal citations began. Robert and Megan were subpoenaed to testify. The movement in the Cape May Forum did not go unnoticed, and soon the entire city knew about it. Cape may look small, but her ears are huge. I began to notice the whispers. At the pharmacy, two women who always greeted Megan now looked away. At the fair, the girl who made the cakes for the family events already commented that it won't be possible to deliver the next orders. And me? I just watched. Megan lost 2 marketing contracts from small local businesses. The image is not good for our brand. They said, Robert, who worked at an engineering firm in Atlantic City, began to hear rumors in the hallways. One important client mentioned the case of the sued mother-in-law in front of the supervisor. Social ice arrived before legal punishment, and all that, without me having to raise my voice. While their world crumbled from the outside in, I rebuilt mine from the inside out. I hired a cleaning company. They came with gloves. Buckets, good smells. They took away the rest of the dirt that was left over from that invasion. I painted the balcony, changed the carpets, restored the plants that were dry. I also asked for all the locks to be changed, not of fear, but for dignity. There are things that we live and keep, but maybe, by telling, we help another heart to breathe. Like this video and sign up. And let's make this story reach those who need it. There are women out there feeling alone inside their own house. Perhaps this story will help her remember that there is still a way out. Gradually, the house began to breathe with me again. The light entered again with more delicacy. The water in the sink seemed cleaner. Even the noise of the wind in the trees sounded different. It was as if the place had also felt everything I felt. And now, finally, it was beginning to heal. The great thing about silent justice is that it doesn't need an audience. It happens when no one sees it, and it hurts more than 1,000 screams. But, believe me, it was not yet the end, because what arrived in the mail days later, mine a custom Kilconton, made me sit down, and stare for minutes at that letter in my hands. The sender? You can't imagine. But when I opened it and read it, I realized that even remorse has a smell, and it was coming from someone who, until then, had never said a single true word. Lord so. Can you guess who wrote it? Because what was in that letter? It would change everything. It was on a rainy Friday, one of those when the sky seems to want to warn us of something, that the phone rang. The number was unknown, but my intuition recognized it before the ringing was over. I answered in silence. On the other side, now, Veronica's voice was trembling, desperate. No, as if each word tasted like sand in her mouth. Donna, Gloria, forgive me for calling like that. But, Newcow, my alarm, which you got for stick so chaos. They are broke. Oh, Robert, Megan, it's all apart. We need to talk. Please. You are a mother. Ash the grandmother. I didn't answer. I just turned it off. Silence sometimes says it all. 3 days later, she came. Alone. He knocked on the front door, and I knew it wasn't wind. Open. Oh. Megan was unrecognizable. No makeup. The hair tied up anyway. The dark circles under the eyes. He carried a bag of faded cloth. He held it out towards me without saying anything. Immediately. Inside the bag were my things. The pearl earrings I inherited from my grandmother. The golden pocket watch that belonged to my husband, and some of the rare coins I collected for years with such care. I didn't come to justify myself. Gloria, no, she said, her voice breaking. I just want you to drop the charges. Robert could lose his job. The kids are asking of the lady. We made a mistake, but you don't have to end it all like that. I stood there, holding the door frame, looking at it as if watching a shadow from the past, trying to sneak back into the room. We are not trying to deceive. We're trying to fix it. She insisted. No. But fix what? I thought what you tried to steal from me was more than material good. It was dignity, and there, Pilcody, around, looking at that woman who for so long occupied my house with fake smiles and cold words. I understood. Now, they were not sorry. They were afraid. Fear of losing what was left. Fear of the dirty name. Of reputation. Of the punishment of one's own conscience. Megan, I said, "Well done, you," lowering my tone so that the words cut deeper. You're not sorry. They're just afraid. She tried to get closer, her eyes teary, her hand still outstretched. We can solve this as a family. The word family. How much convenience is hidden in it. I took a deep breath. I remembered the day I entered that house and heard her call me a leech. I remembered the empty closet, the hidden clothes, the jars pushed in the fridge. I looked her in the eye and said, "Ooh, family. True families do not invade. They don't even lie, nor do they steal." No. And with the same calm that has always guided me, I closed the door, slowly, without knocking, no rush. Every inch of wood leaning against the frame was like a full stop being elegantly drawn. Inside me, oh, there was no anger. Oh, there was clarity. No, nush. There are people who only approach when they feel the loss in their pockets, not in their hearts. And that's why some doors, once closed, no longer open. But before I left the balcony that night, before I turned off the light in the entrance, I noticed something curious. Megan had left an envelope next to the bag. On it, a note, 3 handwritten lines, and a signature that was not hers. When I read, something inside me stirred, because not every truth comes at the right time. But when it comes, it can turn everything upside down. Can you imagine what was written? Because what those words revealed, it was just the beginning of a turnaround that even I didn't expect. The envelope was simple, white, without perfume or mark. The letters, written with a black pen already failing, trembled as if each word weighed more than the last. Mom, I hope you still love me. It started like this, and just that first sentence has already torn the air out of my chest for a second. I messed up, but you also chose justice over family. I closed my eyes, took a deep breath. The sound of the sea hitting the rocks in the distance was the only noise in the room. I read each line as if holding shards of glass with my bare hands. He told him that Megan had left him, that the contracts had been terminated, that debts were piling up, and that our family's name was being dragged everywhere. He said that he was doing community service at the nursing home on the other side of the city, and that, at night, he returned to a rented, small, unfurnished apartment. I just wanted to protect you, Mom. I just wanted to solve everything without worrying you. I folded the letter carefully and put it in the last drawer of the closet, the one where the old documents and your father's marriage certificate are kept. I didn't tear it up, but I didn't answer either, because a mother's love is not synonymous with amnesia, and forgiveness cannot be used as a shortcut by those who have never truly repented. You know, we spend a lifetime believing that we have raised a child well, and maybe he did. I gave everything I could, within what I knew and had, but some blindness is chosen by them. Robert didn't fall because of Megan. He fell because, deep down, he stopped listening to his own heart. That phrase of his, "You chose justice over family," echoed inside me all day. And at night, before going to sleep, I remembered what his father used to tell me when Robert was still a child, running through the halls with his feet dirty with sand. Some men only learn when they lose what they think they have, and that's what happened Moon. Robert thought he had a right to my silence, to my home, to my trust. He thought that being my son was enough to cross all limits. But he forgot that a mother also has a soul. I take no pleasure in his ruin, but you're firm in not saving him from that, because sometimes what hurts is not the fall, is the lesson it brings. Seeing his name come out in the local newspapers, seeing the people he admired walking away, all of this hurt me. But it didn't make me turn back, because the justice I chose was not revenge. It was respect, first by me, then for everything I built alone. These days, I sat alone on the porch with a cup of chamomile tea and stared at the reddish sky in the late afternoon. A lady passing by on the sidewalk waved, smiled, and said, it's good to see you back, Gloria. It was the first time in months that I felt truly at home. But that same night, as I was picking up the towel from the porch, I heard the sound of footsteps on the other side of the fence. A figure standing still, silhouette of a man. What? That unlocked. Heart raced, and when his voice sounded, low, can't see him out. Lion cup, Ternaloyaka, Hashik. Embarrassed, when Hindel, my body froze. Mom, can I talk to you for a minute? It was him. Why? Robert Intandion. But what did he come to say? You won't believe it, because sometimes even the most hardened heart finds a thread of light. Was it regret, or just another game? I remember his face that night. It was no longer the face of the man who married Megan, nor of the son I cradled in my arms so many late nights. It a face empty of certainties and full of questions. Mom, can I talk to you for a minute? He said. No, I'd, standing at the edge of my garden, his hands in his pockets and his shoulders slumped. I didn't signal to get in. I didn't even back down. I stood there, with the blanket on my shoulders, the smell of the wet earth of my young geraniums mixing with the sea air. I just came to tell you that I lost everything. He began the job, the contracts, even my name cleared. Megan, she left me. I listened in silence. He expected pity. One down, one left and shallow tile. But I no longer had that coin in my pocket. And what did you come for, Robert? I asked, without raising my voice. One of sit on sub. He swallowed. My you servant swipe thou. Nothing. Alone. I needed you to know that I recognize what I did. Took months, maybe years. But there, in the curve of night and shame, he took the first step. I didn't apologize. I didn't hug it. He just said, go live your truth now, Robert. I'll, with humility, and maybe one day you understand what you really lost. He nodded. No, he's just not daring to stare at me for long. How too? He turned his back and left. I didn't see him leave. I kept looking at the sky, where the first star was already twinkling. The following days were like the rocking of the sea, calm, and there, repetitive, and healing. Wow. The house breathed again. Now, I have hired a young woman named Eleanor, a recent widow, who comes twice a week to help me with the cleaning and gardening. We talk little, but when she smiles, it seems that the air inside these walls becomes lighter. I planted red geraniums again. The old ones, in the pile, Megan had let dry. Now, the flowers are reborn strong, as if they had never been trampled on. I updated my will with Thomas. He was silent when he read the clause I wrote by hand. The house located on Cape May Beach will be donated in full to a shelter for widowed and elderly women, preferably over 65 years of age. May this place serve as a refuge of peace for those who, like me, have already been treated as a burden, when in fact they were a column. Thomas looked at me with a certain respect, perhaps even surprise, but I just smiled. That house, which I built with my arms and dreams, would not be an inheritance from those who tried to rip my soul away. It would be hope for those who are still looking for a piece of land to call their own. The other day, I sat alone on the sand, late afternoon. The seagulls already low in the sky, and a gentle breeze hitting my face. The blanket over his shoulders, his feet buried in the cold sand. And there, Lawrence, for the first time in a long time, I felt peace. It was not joy. It was something deeper, a quiet dignity, like a candle that remains lit even after the storm. Because in the end, I didn't win with shouts, not even with revenge. I won with silence, with firmness, and with faith in my own history. And you know what? If you have come this far with me, if you have listened to every bit of this road with an open heart, so get ready, because there's one last thing I still need to tell. One thing that no one knows. Not even Robert. A decision I made alone. But that will change everything. Do you want to know what it was? So follow me just a little longer. Because the end has not yet come. Today, I walk slowly but steadily. I'm 73 years old, and I live alone in that same house in Cape May. But I am no longer the woman who arrived there with a torn soul, holding the pain as if it were an invisible suitcase. Now, my hands, scarred by so many needles and seams throughout my life, rest calmly on the terrace railing. The sea is still there, sometimes rough, sometimes serene, like life. I get a letter or two from Robert. None brings true repentance. None receives a response. Not out of spite, but out of protection. Some things, when we open it again, they cut it again. The neighborhood greets me with kindness. The ladies of the church say that I'm an example. And I don't see myself as a hero, only as someone who, in the face of cowardice, chose not to disappear. Sometimes I remember Megan's phrase, the one that hurt me so deeply. Why is that old Leech here? Today, I smile at the thought, because time has a sense of justice that no one can manipulate. It gradually sucks the shine of those who live by lies, and it slowly returns the light to those who have been extinguished. Life has taught me that to love is not to be silent, that being a mother is not accepting anything, and that dignity is not negotiable. If I can leave a single lesson for those who have listened to me so far, one, it is this: do not allow yourself to be taken away from yourself. The house I built was invaded, but my soul, this one no one could overthrow. And sometimes the greatest act of self-love is closing a door. If you heard my story to the end, I want to thank you. Really, there are things that we keep for a lifetime. But when we share, it is as if the weight became lighter. Wow. Thank you for following me here. If this video touched you in any way, leave a like, because for me, it's like a hug, one of those tight ones that we don't forget. Subscribe here to the channel too, because this is like inviting me for another coffee. We still have a lot of history to exchange. Write here in the comments of which city you are watching. It is so beautiful to know where these hearts come from, that unite by respect. And if you want to listen to me again, when the coffee is passed, activate the bell. Mood to so. That way you don't miss the next moment of truth that we will share. And look, it's not going away yet. Listen to the next true story that will appear on the screen. Always remember, each wrinkle tells a story. Now, and each story carries a strength. Now, watch the next video here on the channel with another incredible story.